With the dawn of Islam, building of the Islamic State has settled and spread from China to Andalusia that carries a message of science and civilization for humanity. In the 10th century, Muslims began to transfer the science and knowledge of ancient civilizations in Greece, India, and Persia to their home countries and translate it into Arabic. That is what's known in the history of the Islamic civilization as the translation movement. Medical care 1,000 years ago was free for all, and the treatments were highly sophisticated. The hospitals of medieval Islam were hospitals in the modern sense of the word. In them was the best available medical knowledge dispensed for free to all who came. It could even be said that they were a forerunner to the National Health Service, and they flourished as the rulers of Islam competed to see who could construct the most magnificent. Some hospitals were huge. Others were surrounded with gardens and orchids, and most offered advanced social welfare to patients, including treatment by music. Famous Muslim surgeons at this time lived in Cordoba at the height of Islamic civilization. Abu al-Qasim Khalaf ibn al-Abbas al-Zahrawi, a man known in the West as Abu al-Qasis, he would have already written At-Tasrif. Including in At-Tasrif was a treatise called On Surgery, which introduced a staggering collection of over 200 surgical tools. Using instruments for surgery was a revolutionary concept because it enabled science to change from being speculative to experimental. Instruments discussed by Zahrawi include cauterization tools of various shapes and sizes, scalpels, very sharp knives that are used for making a variety of incisions, hooks, usually with a sharp or blunt half-circular end that are still used and named in the same way. His book, At-Tasrif, giving detailed accounts of the full dental, pharmaceutical, and surgical disciplines of his time. Though Az-Zahrawi was the first to use catgut in surgery, it was Ar-Razi who was the first to use animal gut for sutures, and Az-Zahrawi also used twisted fibers from strings of musical instruments for surgical purposes. Az-Zahrawi remains a leading scholar who transformed surgery into an independent science based on the knowledge of anatomy. His illustration and drawing of the tools is an innovation that keeps his contribution alive, reflected in its continuous influence on the works of those who came after him. The manuscript called Commentary on the Anatomy of the Canon of Avicenna was written by Ibn Nafis, a Muslim scholar born in Damascus, Syria, and educated at the famous Nuri Hospital. When he graduated, he was invited to Cairo by the Sultan of Egypt to work as the principal of the Nasiri Hospital founded in Cairo. Ibn Nafis's commentary was so famous because he accurately studied and described the preliminary circulation. In it he explained the role of the heart and lungs, in effect, the respiratory system, emphasizing the blood was purified in the lungs, where it was refined on contact with the air, inhaled from the outer atmosphere. On how the blood's preliminary circulatory system worked, Ibn al-Nafis explained that the system was based on the movement of blood from one chamber of the heart to the lungs, and then back to a different chamber of the heart. These important observations were not known in Europe until 300 years later. As the Muslim lands grew, merchants and travelers came across exotic plants, trees, seeds, and spices previously unknown to them. They collected and brought back a huge number of samples of raw ingredients, along with knowledge and information about their use, combing the world and its harshest of environments. Botany, the scientific study of plants, and the use of plants in medicine went hand in hand. While men like Abu Hanif al-Dinawari, called the father of modern botany, were compiling vast lists of plants in books like his A Treatise on Plants, others like Al-Razi, a 10th century medical scholar, used colchicum as a drug for treatment of gout. Al-Andalus, or Muslim Spain, was a springboard for herbal development. In 11th century Toledo, Spain, and later in Seville, the first royal botanical gardens of Europe made their appearance. Initially, they were pleasure gardens, but they also functioned as trial grounds for the acclimatization of plants brought from the Near and Middle East. The 13th century Malaja Muslim Ibn al-Baytar was a leading botanist as well as the author of the largest pharmacological encyclopedia that has survived to our time. Dictionary of Simple Remedies in Food is an inclusive work on simple drugs and describes over 3,000 botanical simples listed in alphabetical order. He took information from over 150 authors and interweaved this with his own observations.
فإن دهر انقضى بالخسر وأسف ولاح شيبي وأيام الصبا ذهبت ولم يكن لي بالخيرات من عمل إلا الخطايا على ظهري قد احتملت يا رب هب لنا وللمسلمين والمسلمات منك يا رب رحمة ومغفرة واكشف كروبا بنا يا رب قد نزلت. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا من بك يرحمنا الله. الصلاة والسلام عليكم يا أنبياء الله أجمعين. الفاتحة.
It is He who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon. All swim along each in its orbit. The night sky and the concept of the universe have inspired poetry, music, philosophy, and science for thousands of years, and the Muslims of the millennium ago were no different. The wonders of the heavens inspired the first successful manned flight 1200 years ago, as others were keeping a watchful eye on the night sky. They needed to know the times of the daily prayers that depend on the sun's position, the direction of Mecca from every geographical location, and the moon's cycle for the Muslims' lunar calendar. From these impetuses, Muslims also made epic discoveries, like the first record of the star system outside our own galaxy, and the third inequality of the moon's motion, and developed instruments that laid the foundation for modern-day astronomy. These all began in the 8th century, with the first observatory and accurate astronomy tables. In the 9th century, Baghdad Caliph al-Ma'mun set up an intellectual academy, the House of Wisdom, to translate manuscripts. Among the first works translated into Arabic was the Alexandrian astronomer Ptolemy's Greek word, which described a universe in which the sun, moon, planets, and stars revolved around Earth. Al-Battani, known in the West as Al-Battagnas, wrote the Sabian Table, which was a very influential work for centuries after him. His work included timing of the new moons, calculating the length of the solar and sidereal year, the prediction of eclipses, and the phenomenon of parallax. Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni lived between 1973 and 1048. He stated that the Earth rotated around its own axis, calculated the Earth's circumference, and fixed scientifically the direction of Mecca from any point of the globe. He also wrote, in total, 150 works. These included 35 treatises on pure astronomy, but only 6 have survived. Ibn Yunus. Ibn Yunus made observations for nearly 30 years, from 1977, using a large astrolabe nearly 1.4 meters in diameter. He recorded more than 10,000 entries of the sun's position throughout all these decades. Muslims also devised star maps and astronomical tables, and both of these would be used in Europe and the Far East for centuries to come. For you subjected the night and the day, the sun and the moon. The stars are in subjection to his command. Verily in this are signs for people who are wise.